So I'm joined this evening. Today is Monday, the 8th of January, with Mark McLean from over the pond, the other side. And we do bounce stuff back and forth with each other. And I just thought it's great to get together and to discuss the current storm that's brewing in the church, the storms, the preparations, and everything like this. How are you, Mark?
Yeah, Robert, thanks for having me back. It's good always to have a good chat with you and that. I'm doing well, thank you. It's been a busy couple of months with my own channel. It's been busy Christmas and New Year. I've been under 2 rounds of man flu, if anyone's following what I'm talking about. But I'm over the worst now, I believe. So it's great
Yeah,
to be back.
that's good. Yeah, no, I had a little bit of man flu. COVID over the Christmas, the headaches. But I was taking my vitamin D and stuff, so I got through it okay. I didn't get too bad. But yeah, no, I just thought I'd kick off today and discuss one topic it's come across all the Catholic media, and it's about they've dug up another book by Cardinal Fernandez, which some people are calling it erotic, and Cardinal Fernandez is kind of he's well, he wasn't cardinal then, but he's broached into a topic that's certainly causing a lot of conversation. But as I speak Spanish fluently, I had a glance through the book as soon as the news came out. And I was just thinking afterwards, in seminary, we studied anthropology, we would have studied Love and Responsibility by John Paul II, and different works, Theology of the Body. And I think, because as a priest, you're stepping into ministry, you have to deal with relationships and how healthy relationships function, and understanding sexuality, when you're dealing, to be able to minister in the church. So I do remember vividly, because, when you're coming from an Irish background and you're not exposed to this um, topic, you're saying, well, this is interesting. This is something we certainly didn't talk about in secondary school in Ireland. So I just thought it was just interesting when I saw this topic pop up today, and I said, do you know, we were having these discussions in the church in the 1990s on specifically on that topic, because I think the church had to grapple with badly formed people that didn't understand that whole area, and how we could do it. But I just been interested to know what your thoughts are on it, and maybe it'll be interesting to see how the church responds to this over the next couple of days.
For sure. I already came in from work there and I could see a few posts popping up in different social media
Mm,
threads about it and that. He seems to be getting a reputation and an image about himself now because he also had one about the art of kissing. And
mm,
um, one of my guest speakers recently was Xavier Iral, who's well known in the faith circles on YouTube. But he says he's banned his children from ever reading it.
yeah,
Titled Great. And so I haven't read that. I haven't even read the Fiducia Supplicans, although I'm very much aware of it. I've been hearing the commentary from trusted priests on the platforms and others.
mm,
But it seems to be kind of all circling around this types of stuff. Um, so unless I could really critique it, I would just probably come across my first impressions with it. People
yeah,
are putting up on this new one. It's about erotic stuff, using the word orgasm, linking it to intimacy with God and all that stuff. And straight away I'm thinking, right, is this just the buzzards on the fence ready to grab the next thing to tarnish this man who none of us know personally at all?
no, no,
Same where we're used to seeing that with Pope Francis, with many people. But it reminded me, say, well, maybe this is something I heard once at a theology of the body retreat.
yeah,
Maybe that's something they're quoting that could link to Teresa of Avila and what I've heard about her linking such criteria together as well. And Christopher West, who covered a
yeah,
lot of Paul II's theology of the body. So straight away, I had at least three or four memories of this kind of topic, with which is beautiful when it's been presented. So I don't know if that's where he's went with it because I haven't read it. And I
yeah.
don't really feel the need to read it. But when people are jumping on the bandwagon yet again, here's another bad thing that he's done. I'm like, well, he ain't the first person ever to speak about intimacy with God and linking it to the idea of something as strong interiorly as arousals
Yeah.
or orgasms
Yeah.
and things like that. And
Yeah.
while I'm on that note, I may as well get the quotes out in case people are wondering why I'm leaving it with that. It's true as you say, I think the further back in time you go, from the parents to the grandparents, the great grandparents, and so forth, the further back you go, the more it was all about image and reputation. I mean, you only need to watch Downton Abbey to see that. You know,
Yeah.
not that I watch it, the wife watches, my wife, I should say. But it's all about image and reputation and hush hush, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Everything's, oh, that's all dirty, that's dirty in private, you know. But then John Paul II became Pope, all the statues were covered. And the first thing he was doing was uncovering them. This is our humanity. This is our bodies. We give glory to God through the bodies. And of course, he comes in with his books, Love and Responsibility. The first few years of his pontificate, he gave everything all about marriage and sexuality and the uniqueness of man and woman and what it meant together in marriage. And that's why we've come to know theology of the body, as it's called, with all his teachings. It's deep at times, but it's beautiful. And then, of course, Christopher West came along, brought it down to a bit more an easier level and how he's presented it in different ways over the years.
Yeah.
And Jason and Christina Everett as well, or other ones
Yeah.
that not pure
Yeah.
womanhood, pure manhood. Now, with all that being said, I remember Christopher West. It might have been World Youth Day in Australia. I saw a short video, or maybe it was one of his DVDs. I think it was like Creation and Redemption. Someone put it on. It was all the teachings again of John Paul II. But it came to that point where he spoke about the orgasms and the beauty of the sex of coming together. This is my body given to you, freely open to life, you know,
Yeah.
completely committed in love and all that. But then he quoted John Paul II when it came to orgasms. And more or less, if memory serves me correct, it was the man's duty to bring the woman to the
Yes.
climax. And,
Yes.
and
Yes.
next thing Christopher West says, and I was telling it to this young lady, and she was so taken back. She went, "The Pope rocks." And he went,
Yeah.
"Yeah, he is the Pope."
Yeah.
He's the
Yeah.
rock.
Yeah. But
And
like,
well, why that? Why?
yeah.
Why? Because it's the oxytocin, the human superglue, isn't it? It's the same
Yeah.
hormone that's released when it's at breastfeeding. That
Yeah.
superglue of bringing together. And when a man is fully giving himself to a woman and a woman to a man, they're glorifying God. They're
Yeah.
becoming co-creators with God,
Yeah.
and that self-giving act of love and bringing to that point of the ultimate intimacy of orgasms. So with that and other things it could be saying, such as I think people say like when Trees of Avila reached the highest level, you know, the interior castle and that depth of intimacy with God. And then with the fiery arrow, it came pierced her heart with the angel. I haven't read her words clearly, but people over the years with the Carmelite spirituality, that intimacy, the fire within, the only way she could link our human emotions, how our muscles were, and how the point of out of body was linking it something similar
Yeah.
to like an orgasm.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
was not just any saint, also a doctor of the church. But people have to say, well, it's not dirty. It's
Yeah.
beautiful when you understand you as a human being made in the image and likeness of God, and also the fact that this is how we glorify God in our bodies. What you're seeing out maybe in society today might not be exactly what's happening, and he's
Yeah.
still got a lot to answer for when it comes to this same-sex couples blessing. But just seeing two or three posts already tonight, now that this other book's been found, it's like, well, this is what's triggered my memory. So maybe it isn't all as bad as people are henpicking. Maybe it's a sign that so many people don't actually know the
Yeah.
beautiful teaching of human
Yeah.
sexuality and marriage coming from the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was
Because if you don't talk about these things, if you don't explain sexuality to people, the man a man's proper use of his body and marriage and intimacy, if we don't explain these to then you know people end up with a wrong view of their own sexuality, with a wrong view of their relationships. I remember in a school in Mexico, in a secondary school, and we got a couple in, a man and a woman, and they were talking about precisely what you're talking about. I know, and I know the lads, there were 16, 17-year-old lads at the time in the school, but they were freely talking about the importance of intimacy in marriage and waiting to meet the right woman and to give your life to that woman, and and it was a lot building at the time on John Paul II's uh, theology of the body, and love and responsibility, the seven books, and man in action. I was just looking up the different books today, but I mean, he was revolutionary in a way in bringing these topics to the fore, because otherwise, if we say, oh, we don't talk about these things, okay, uh, it's good to keep something mysterious in your marriage as intimate, private. I think we all understand it, but then when you're dealing with problems, if people don't understand, okay, well, look, sex isn't a 2 minute thing that some guys have the idea of, and it's also not the pornography that they're looking at on their screen. You have to have the healthy relationships. You have to understand, the healthy aspects of sex that are important in marriage, and the church needs to deal with them, talk about this, educate, bring us into that philosophy. I just think that the media today, the Catholic media, they're not doing the Catholic world any favors by just pouncing on Cardinal Fernandez. I think we could wait a few days or a weeks and do a measured response. And I just think it was like exactly as you said, it's like vultures. Let's come in and pick him off now because we've dug up a book that he's written 30 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. But look, it'll be interesting to see the commentary went on. But I think if you're going to quote that book, you're also going to have to deal with all of the other writings that have come up in the church. And the church, I mean, I we look at the sex abuse scandals and stuff in the church, this that all comes from bad formation, bad understanding, bad people that don't understand themselves. They're broken inside. You need to bring them to the truth. You need to help them. You need formation, and you need to talk about this. There's no other way forward. We need a healthy discussion. That's my thoughts on it today. But as I said, I don't know if I would have written the book the way he's written it, but it's something that he's obviously thought about, and I'm not here defending the book, but I'm also think that there has to be a healthy discussion on this topic.
I think it goes back to people, first of all, having a real genuine sign of true discernment.
Mm,
Because I put 99% of people coming on, leaving comments on the social media threads or sharing the videos that's tarnishing the man. And I bet you they haven't even watched it. I bet they haven't even read the book. I bet you none of them have even read this other one with the same-sex couple stuff. Again, I know I haven't read it,
mm,
but trusted sources talk, and it's like, well, I ain't for it either for now. But
yeah,
eventually, if at the time I would read it before saying a
yeah,
bit. But it makes an informed decision. It's an informed opinions. Right now, 99% of the people don't do that. It's
no,
uninformed. And the other
yeah,
thing on the content of sexuality and all this that's the topic of discussion popping up, it all goes back to maturity as well.
yeah,
I mean, I think 20 years ago, I mean, I couldn't sit here as an 18-year-old guy talking freely like this.
no,
Maybe even in my 20s. I
no.
couldn't.
Yeah, well, wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't have the tools to even talk about it.
No,
Sure,
but yeah, I can, you know.
yeah. Yeah, I remember. I specifically remember in seminary, and we were studying it, and they brought a lot of these topics up. And I was just saying, God, I don't, I felt very immature to be at that time to be able to talk about these things, and yet, you need to, because you're going to go out and counsel people, or you're going to help them. You're going to try especially if you're a priest in confession, you're going to deal with issues, that people's marriage problems and so forth, or a man that wants to leave his wife and stuff like this, and you have to be able to give encouragement and direction to couples, to people that you meet. And if we don't talk about these things, for example, are you looking after your wife? Are you spending time to be intimate with her? Do you know, because women will feel this if you just disregard your wife, you're not spending time with her, you're not being intimate with her, she'll feel, oh, this guy doesn't love me. There was a guy I was helping a while back, and he had changed stuff in his relationship, and I said, and the relationship wasn't working, and I said, look, you have to be careful how you treat your wife. You just can't forget that important part. Women need that physical touch in the man in marriage, and you have to spend time in it, and you have to be conscious of that and make time for it. But I suppose the church is woefully unprepared, or was unprepared 50, 60 years ago, to talk about these topics. And I think now, I'm not defending Karen Fernandez's book, because like I think you need a couple of weeks for somebody with a doctorate in this, maybe to come out and give a better expose. But I'm just saying, we've been dealing with this in the church, we've been reading about it, and these are topics. Look, you have to be mature enough to discuss, and to help form others.
I think that's the biggest message to take away, is the fact that when the topic comes up, at least we know how to speak about it maturely as adults, as men. Like you say, priests, in a way, if they are, I mean, maybe most priests today probably have had a bit of life experience before becoming priests. Some still are just straight into priesthood from school, although it's more rarer, I would say, especially in the West. But they can still learn. They can still meditate and learn and see the beauty, and still proclaim that faith, that beautiful teaching. But I would also say the importance should, first and foremost, even perhaps beyond the man and woman, the husband and wife, the parents, because
Mm.
you're also then having that maturer sense, not just in your own day-to-day life as married couple, but you're raising children, future
Yes, yes,
future fathers, future husbands and wives and mothers and all sorts. So how it begins in the home with that foundation is where the fruits will eventually come in time. And if you do that part well, because I know if God blesses my wife and I with children, then it's going to be a very, I would say, mature upbringing for them, especially in the
yeah,
faith. And when it
yeah.
comes to this type of topic of discussion, it won't be a big elephant in the room when it comes about.
No, no.
Oh,
I know. I think, it's part of who we are. It's part of our fabric of life. It's part of our fabric of existence. People need to have a healthy view of this, that's not caught up in the extremes that we see in our society. But I find it very interesting that this has all been dug up now, and I do think I do think in a couple of weeks we're going to see a lot more discussion on John Paul II, theology of the body, and on the discussion that has been going on in the philosophical anthropological side in the church over the last decades, because you know it's an interesting topic to and an important topic to talk about anyway.
oh, it's amazing. I was hooked on it for quite some time when I was in the lay community years ago.
Yeah,
Was a big discovery for many of us in our early 20s. Finally getting this shown and taught to us, it just blows away.
yeah,
And when you're thinking about priesthood and religious life, and then you see this beauty of marriage, it made discernment all the more tricky because it's so, so beautiful.
yeah,
When you get into those depths. And Wojtyła, John Paul II, he was ahead of his time with it all as well. And they reckon his book, Love and Responsibility, had an influential impact on Pope Paul VI as it
yeah,
came about the time writing Humanae Vitae.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I've heard that before. I've also heard a quote, I don't know if it was John Paul's like biographer or someone, but basically theology of the body is a supernatural time bomb waiting to go off around the world with like supernatural effect.
yeah,
You learn the beauty and
yeah.
stop settling for second best, basically.
Yeah, because that's what I was when I just took out the anthropology book, and all of the footnotes are love and responsibility. John Paul II, love and responsibility, or obviously Thomas Aquinas is I see quoted a lot, but I just thought it was just interesting. You know, it's just interesting. I wonder if these people now are going to dig out the different anthropology books that we had to study and see what they think about them. But again, look, as I said, I'm not an expert on Cardinal Fernandez or his work. I just think as Catholics, wait a week or two, read it, study it, maybe look for clarification, feedback from them. But let's not be the Catholic vultures ready to pounce in on every negative thing in the church, because this discussion on the theology in the body, on love and responsibility, it was badly needed in the church, because otherwise we don't develop properly that part of the teaching. And I think in the early church, if you read some of the early church fathers, they were a lot more. I was just thinking they were a lot more sensible, and they did discuss this in a sensible way. And I don't know what, maybe over the life of the church, it just didn't move forward as it should have. But I just think it's an interesting discussion that's happening at this moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Look, I wanted to touch base on some of the stuff that's happening on your channel, because you've interviewed Daniel O'Connor and Xavier Iral, and I think we see this. I mean, it's an interesting time to be Catholic. We kind of see a kind of strange momentum building at this moment in time in the church, and you've put together that timeline. And not that I hold myself to strict timelines, but I do think we do live in interesting times, Mark. And I was just thinking, what are you getting from all these interviews with these interesting characters? Because you're getting kind of this panorama view now. Where do you think we're sitting, and what are your 2014 predictions for the rest of the year? Just
2024, not
oh,
2014.
2024, 2024. What are your predictions? Come on, let me know.
Well, it's not my own predictions. It's based on everything that's been brought forth from these Marian apparitions and prophecies, and you put together. And of course, again, it comes to discernment, and we submit ourselves under the church and what the church comes with that. Even the ones that are accepted by the church, such as Lourdes or Fatima or even Knock, we're still
Mm.
not obliged to believe in them.
No.
So that's where it is. But I think it's Catechism number 67. I always quote, and I had it in one of the beginning videos of the prophecies. Catechism number 67 speaks about the fact they can't be added or taken away anything of Christ's full revelation, but they can serve
Mm.
in a certain time period for clarity and discernment based on what's already been revealed by Christ. It's just, well, 2,000 years later, how does Knock or how does Fatima or Medjugorje or Garabandal, how do they help serve now? Because they did speak about future miracles, like such as the permanent signs.
Yeah.
Uh, one of the ones that's most repeated for a long, long time, many times before Garabandal and even other places afterwards, is the illumination of conscience, the permanent, sorry, the warning is known as the illumination of conscience, and the criteria is there, and I think. Xavier didn't give me anything I didn't already know in terms of most of these Marian apparitions. The two that he really cleared up for me, one, I never looked into them a great deal. One was La Salette, although I was aware of it. But his book brought around a good bit of clarity on that, and that's when I did get some things cleared up thanks to his research and speaking about it. The other one, again back in France, was a lady I read about many, many years ago, and I forgot all about her. Marie Julie Jehani.
Mm.
And those two alone are probably enough. But
Yeah.
then add in the Marian apparitions of Fatima, Garabandal, Akita, Japan, Medjugorje. I seem
Mm.
to stick to the older ones. I know there's a lot of newer ones I'm aware of, Pedro Regis, Luz de Maria, many. Father Michel Rodrigue is one over Xavier after spending several days with him back in August. Xavier went to visit him as well.
Mm.
So he's discerned all that, and I trust his opinion on it. But when we had a few chats, taking in what I already knew, plus La Salette and Marie-Julie Jeheni, the timeline was as clear as it came. It was that undiscovered document of La
So
Salette.
let.
It
Yeah.
was found by accident in the archives of the Vatican in 1999, where young Maxim wrote to the bishop, and I'm sure it was sealed from the bishop to the Pope. Anyway, it had both on it, and basically says God will bring about all these events or chastisements or whatever by the late 20th century. But if mankind responds in kind, it'll be delayed until the first quarter of the 21st century. So that takes us up to 2025. And I like to think the late 20th century did get delayed thanks to Our Lady appearing in Medjugorje, because look at the response to prayer, to fasting, conversion.
Mm.
Medjugorje is a supreme Marian apparition site for me. It takes the crown after being there 5 times. I've been to Fatima, Lourdes, Garabandal, love them all, would go back. They're still vital in these times. But then you bring in Marie-Julie Jeheni, which when you see the timeline and how Garabandal, we knew all along we had four popes after John the 23rd. That was concluded with Benedict. Then we're into a new era. So
Yeah.
France is the beginning of that bridge into the new era of the world and the church. Those four popes have done. But we know after other interviews with the Garabandal visionaries, the great warning, the illumination of conscience would come about, and within 12 months, it would be the great miracle.
Mm.
The warning comes first, but what do we know about the warning, the miracle? Well, the miracle, it's been deducted from other interviews and been put there with those that studied it, even friends of Conchita, such as Glenn Hudson and Xavier as well. We've got an even year, that it would occur in an even year. It would coincide with the Great Synod, and that again after the four popes. So if people were guessing back in the 80s and the 90s, it wouldn't have done them any good. We never had the four popes. We've now had the four popes completed by Benedict's passing. We're now in an even year. It's coinciding with the synod and synodality, which is bringing a lot of confusion and everything else along with it. And look at all the other signs that's going on in this church with division and chaos, just like she told us at Akita. So all those things are now in place right now. And we also know the miracle would occur between April 8th to the 16th. It would fall on a Thursday at 8:30 p.m. It would be on the feast of a martyr of the Eucharist. Now you put all that in context as it's been given to us, the only date that could be this year would be April 11th,
Okay.
which is
April
at this
11th.
point of recordings like 95 days away. You were
So
saying
anyway,
it to laugh. We don't have to fear.
I so like I'm just thinking, should I be booking my Camino now in June or not? And I was
Well,
just
I
there.
know certain one or two people. I can't say who it is for not breaking trust. But those very close in Garabandal
Are going to
circle,
go. Yeah.
shall we say, for the first time in their life, we've been aware of Garabandal for many, many, many years. They were seriously a couple of months ago looking to book flights for April just in case.
Yeah.
Now remember,
I
it's
think
just in case, we're not saying it will be April. It's
yeah.
just first time since the 1960s of this prophecy being made. The criteria is now in place for the first time now.
Yeah.
This one I think is 2028 or 2026, then the next one's 2032 or something like that, based on that criteria. But I think, remember also they say when everything's at their worst, the warning would come, fit and all that. But one clear sign that many hold on to is the prophecy that the Pope returns from Moscow and
Mm.
then hostilities break out, everything will get bad, and then that's when the warning will occur. The reason I keep doing this is because Conchita says it was like two stars coming together, giving off a lot of light.
Yeah.
But Marie-Jules Legeheny just put the icing on the cake for me because, again, with her writings and her prophecies, she says when all this was coming, you would see mass migration of many people, many migrants coming across the Mediterranean into Europe, and they would be shaking the dust off their feet to settle in these nations. They'll be French fighting French. The way it was described, I'm not giving a good quote, sorry, but basically, with many Muslims coming over, they won't settle with the French culture, the Irish culture, the English culture, the Italian, whatever. They'll want to create Islam anywhere they go. And we're seeing
Yeah.
that demographic the past decade already being really, really saturated. But then you add in this mass migration, it's clear sign it's happening all at the one time. It's all building up, and this parallel of all in the church, as well as the parallel in the world with all the prophecies concerned, is crystal clear to me. And one of the key things she said when this all happens as well is a long reigning Queen of England will pass away.
Mm.
When
Did you
she
say Queen of England? Was it Queen of
yeah,
England?
Queen of
Yeah.
England. And I recently did an interview with Xavier, and I'm sure he says to his memory it was like 1870s that she made that prophecy. Now
Mm.
that was a couple of decades, it was a few decades before Queen Elizabeth II's uncle abdicated for his brother to step in as king, and then she followed on as queen. So they were never born. She was never born to be queen as such. But Marie-Julie Jahenny made that prophecy way, way back then.
Oh.
So when you see the timeline, maybe we could get it on the screen, if you want.
Yeah,
Basically,
shove it
all the
up.
way through from there. You want me to get it up just now?
Yeah, yeah, because I just think it's interesting. So guys, we'll be all be watching July. I personally think it's going to be an interesting year because you have two wars, and I don't think the Ukrainian war is just going to stop. I think it's going to get more tense. Uh, Somebody says for the first time since World War II, German troops are now based outside of Germany. Did you hear this as well? I'm
Yeah, I
not
heard
sure.
that as well. Yep. North
Yeah,
Korea firing more shells into the south side.
yeah,
Yeah, China's just launched off a new aircraft carrier. Finland's got 15 bases, been taking over with
yeah,
America since it's joined NATO. I'm hearing it all. It's
yeah,
con
yeah. So we're just kind of, it's like the chess pieces are being maneuvered in, and Russia isn't going to say, "Our bad, we're leaving Ukraine. Sorry, we're off." They're going to fight to the end to, and they're going to have the support of China, which
Oh
people
yeah.
don't realize. So look, we're one of the world's greatest superpowers, most populous country, nuclear power, supporting Russia, which they already are. Which they already are. Let's face it. Like, let's not buy. So you're going to see this confrontation. I mean, all it takes is a small incident, a small skirmish. Just it's like the 1960. It's like the First World War. That firing shot of that killed the Archduke for that spark, and very, very quickly, in the matter of weeks, the world could be in a very different place. I mean, we just look at history, and let's not be naive. um and we've got an election year in the US, and President Biden is definitely going to be re-elected. Let's not, they're just going to do it. It's He's such a charismatic, it's like they'll just give him a few more pills, and they'll keep his brain motoring along for a while. I'm sorry, but the Americans are going to hate when I say this, but like, he's the most popular president ever of the United States. Let's face it, the
Yeah.
most popular
Gifts and
president.
memes ever, yeah.
I mean, the mail-in ballots, they're heavily restricted in Europe. This is the reality. Mail-in ballots heavily restricted in Europe, but in America, seemingly they don't have the same problems with election fraud. I don't know. I'm not going to say it because then they'll cancel my video or something.
Can you let me share the screen? I'll get this up for
Yeah,
you.
can you just try it there? Let me just see. Multiples. Yeah, try now.
There we go. There we are. You see it there?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I've
you've
got
got.
one in the side. It's this main one you want to be looking at.
Yeah,
I don't know if it stays up if I hit play. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, good. I'll maybe take it through step by step then if this works. So back in, there's the timeline with the arrow going from left right through to the right, from La Salette in 1846 all the way through to 2025. The reason I did that was because of Maxim's letter saying that the first quarter of the 21st century, that's when it would be delayed until. Wait till you see what fits within that. So we've got Akita back in 1973, giving us the prophecies, cardinal against cardinal, bishop against bishop, and how the devil will infiltrate right through the church. And then a great chastisement would come, which I think comes towards the end of a lot of these prophecies. Garabandal, we know in the 1960s, Fatima back in 1917. Then we've got Marie-Julie Jahennig and further back, and then La Salette for that reason. Now, why am I sitting off here? Because you'll see Garabandal say that in the 1960s, after John the 23rd at the top there'd be four more popes, then we're into the new era. Those four popes have came from Paul VI, John Paul I, John Paul II, and then Pope Benedict.
Mhm.
And there are your four popes. But of course, heaven keeps us in suspense. We have the prophesied time of the two popes conveniently coming now, according to Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. And that's why this bridge time goes off here. Now, I've done a full video on this with my own words. This is all off the cuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Back there in La Salette, remember what they were saying? It was years after the authentication was given about the main message of La Salette. Father, is it his name Alter? Forget his name,
Mm.
sorry. He says when the last Salette message came, it was years later about how the Antichrist would sit, Rome would become the seat of the Antichrist, but that's not the one that was accepted, apparently.
Yeah.
Now, there we've got Pope Pius, we've got Pope Leo the 13th, and there's Marie Julie Jahenny. Now, remember Pope Leo the 13th was also the one who gave us the St. Michael the Archangel prayer. October 13th, 1884, he had his mystical experience, and that's where we get the prayer from. October 13th, again, 1917, was the
19.
miracle of Fatima. Then October 13th, again, 1973, was Akita, the prophecy. Now, the next one that's going to pop up, if you see in your screen there, is Queen Elizabeth. Now, why? Because the time you've worked out these four popes of Garib and Dal, the prophesied time of the two popes, all convenient, plus at the end of St. Malachy's list, I always like to add that little fact in. Then Xavier comes across with the interviews, and that's why I had to put this together. Marie-Julie Jahenny, as you'll see there in the lilac purple colour, why 8083 at the bottom? Because what Xavier's found in his research was Jesus says a lot of this stuff would come about by the year 8083, and he's like, well, is that 1983 or 2283? When could it possibly be? And he's like, well, if you add those 80 or 83 onto 1941 when she died, it would still bring you up to 2021 to 2024.
Yeah.
Still fitting within the first quarter of the 21st century by 2025. And then you think of Maxim's hidden letter that's been hidden all this time, over a century, that was found by accident. And he says all this will be delayed until the first quarter of the 21st century. So everything is still convenient and fitting for now. But the icing on the cake was back then Marie-Julie Jahenny, not just the mass migrations, which will bring about civil war, Russia's to sweep all over Europe right through to France before the restoration of the monarchy, the King of France comes, all that stuff. This is where the Great Hope comes into it. But she said, you know, when it's ready to spark off with all these immigrants in place and then Russia sweeping, the the long reigning Queen of England will pass away, and the next one to take the throne will see the relationship between Britain and Persia disintegrate.
Yeah.
Now, Persia is modern day Iran.
Yeah.
Of course, Queen Elizabeth passed away just over a year ago. So everything, the events that we're seeing in the world, from wars to the migrations, the stuff going on in the church is already prophesied from the Marian apparitions listed here. This is everything pointing right now, and we're in 2024.
Yeah.
So 2024 coincides with the Synod. It's an even year. We've had our four popes now, like we never had before, in terms of when the prophecy could possibly be. It's all fitting now. And there's
Mm.
probably more I haven't got at the top of my memory just yet. But that's where we're at with it for now. And of
Yeah.
course, we know Medjugorje, she's came in the late 20th century. And this is a good thing. This is, to me, I never get afraid of any of this stuff.
No.
When I read about it years ago, when I did have a knot in my stomach, and I was like, oh my days, when's this is going to happen? 30 years later, nothing has, or 20 years later. However, for the first time in 20 years, I've never seen so many things coming at once. And I've actually had a good long conversation, a couple now in person in Garabandal and then in Zoom recently with Mario Loli's son.
Mm.
Garabandal visionary. He's a grown man with his own family and all that. He's grew up with this all his life. And he gave a line, I forget the Latin, but basically means when things are coming towards the end, things speed up more quickly.
Yes.
Things start
Yes.
coming boom, boom, boom. And if the warning is this April, just as an example, like possibly could be, then between now and then, we need the warning first. So if the warning's going to come over the next 2 or 3 months at the most, things have to get to their worst. We're
Mm.
already seeing the migrations out of control. France is saturated. France, as Donald Trump says 6 years ago, France is no longer France. And there's been full 6 years of still breeding them out. There's another 6 years of migration coming in all at once. And then you take that into other European nations as well. Now, I'm all for diversity, inclusion, and everything else. But when it's coming at the point something has to happen to bring about such civil wars and unrests, and that'll just make it easy for Russia to sweep over. You don't need to be a genius or a military war uh,
Yeah. Would
strategist to
you?
put it all out. Then you take in the BRICS. There's Russia, new chairman of the year. Iran and Russia have dropped the dollar. People forget the financial impact that's going to come as well. That's going to like make 1929 depression look like the lottery.
Yeah.
All this is coming at once, and it's not pessimism, it's realism.
Yeah.
Ain't being
It
negative,
is.
being a pessimistic, and being a realistic man, knowing that these are all the prophecies, these are all the times, and they're all coming together. I could have said this 5, 10 years ago. And I said last year in August, September, October, I says 2024 is going to be a nail biting year. And I think
Mm.
it was very significant why Our Lady asked everyone up Apparition Hill on New Year's Day.
Mhm.
Something special, a special gift was given because we have to remember the warning, the illumination of conscience. This is a great act of God's mercy, and how much people need their conscience corrected in this world. They've lost all sense of God, of love, the maturity of the things we were speaking about before with marriage and sexuality and love, and the world's bonkers. It's absolutely
Yes.
on the road to hell in a handbasket. And God, as they would say, just lets us be and we'll mess it up for ourselves. And this little minute 1% of leaders and economists and big pharma and whoever else are ready to send us into oblivion with nuclear war, World War III, and everything else. But thankfully, the true Great Reset isn't that of 2030 with the World Economic Forum and all your communist tyranny. It's the Great Reset's coming from God, and He's using Our Lady in a very efficacious way. I keep hearing that word all the time. The rosary has got such efficacy in these days, and this is why she's constantly saying to us, keep doing it, because souls are at risk, and this is the battle. Those are praying and fasting and doing all the messages, loving them, growing in holiness and in depth and intimacy with God. We're the ones taking on the battle against Satan, the Antichrist. I'm choosing God, I'm choosing Our Lady, and if everyone's the same, you have nothing to worry about. I feel more excited. Like, bring it on. House
Yeah.
is blessed, house is consecrated. I'm wearing my sacramentals. I've got the Epiphany water here. I'm
Yeah.
ready to go for it.
Yeah.
And I nothing, and honestly, see when she made that request in January 1st, of course I couldn't make it. But my wife and I started just praying extra rosaries because of
Yeah.
those few hours here in our own house. We went on the live stream because we wanted to be part of it. It's that gift of the heart wanting to do it for her.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
these things come, whatever experience it is to see our sins before God, it is going to be hard. But remember, apparently 3 days afterwards, we're going to have a new Pentecost.
Mm.
There's a worldwide Pentecost coming.
Yeah.
So we ain't waiting long for it.
No, no. I
And then the
mean,
permanent signs and oh, it's going to be great. Please
yeah.
God, I'm still here, you know?
Well, you've been collecting all of this for years. Like you've been studying this and collecting it. And I mean, I remember the 1990s when I read the messages of Garabandal, and I said, "Oh, and Akita." But like Akita is approved, and it's been well. But Garabandal really always stuck with me. But I never really thought, bishops against bishops. Well, that how would that work out in the church? Like, what would need to happen to see? And then, in Garabandal, you have that message that cardinals and bishops are leading souls to hell. And I was thinking, God, but how would this work it out? But you know, in the last 2 weeks, we saw, and I hate to say it, but we saw a Jesuit rushing to do a press conference to get photographers to bless gay marriage. And that was his words. I'm not putting words. He called a man up and says, "Would you like your marriage blessed?" So I'm quoting his words. And we I just thought like the storm that kicked off in the church after a member of the Vatican's Department of Communications, because remember, he's not just any old priest, he's a member of the Vatican's Department of Communications. Uh, does this, and I just think, guys, look at the confusion that you've caused in the church, bishops against bishops, like cardinal against cardinal, and not just one cardinal against cardinal. You have several cardinals now: Cardinal Burke, Cardinal Sarah, Cardinal Muller, and others. There's actually more cardinals now that have come out. It's not just, I said, guys, do you know what, over a document that Cardinal Fernandez says, no, nothing's changed. Don't worry. It's only 10 to 15 seconds, a little blessing that you meet in the road and you see a couple and they want a blessing. You just give them this little. I just thinking, guys, I mean, I didn't create this storm. We didn't create it as bloggers. This is our bishops and the cardinal that have created this, but we do see the prophecies coming to fruition. And let's call a spade a spade. What Our Lady said was going to pass is, and it's speeding up. It's speeding up. It's like the rhythm of this is becoming more intense as we move forward. Just observing it. So 20 people needn't be afraid, and maybe we're reading too much into it, but like there's a priest in Ireland, Father Doyle. He's got a YouTube channel called God's Cottage. And he waited until today to put out a video on Fiducia Supplicans. And so he waited from the 18th of December till today. He didn't comment on it at all. And he usually does comment on church affairs. And he's a very balanced priest. And I listened to his video and he captured it perfectly, because he's an elderly priest, and even he's saying he's older than me, I'd say, and he's saying he's never seen it in the church, and he's kind of capturing what we're all saying, like, guys, church, bishops, pope, get your act together. It's not like we didn't know for 2000 years what we could bless and what we couldn't bless. Um, we can give individual blessings, but we can't be giving the impression to people that we can that your situation is okay when it's not okay. We have to lead people to the truth. So I think it's moving along. Your timeline is moving along, and I do think we need to pray more in the church. I absolutely do think that this is the time that people need to take seriously the faith and start praying more and bringing people to the faith.
Yeah, well, I think they were saying 2024 is the year of true faith because I think you're going to see many things coming. We've already seen, I mean, the more modern prophets or visionaries, as they say, I don't put a lot onto them. I don't spend more time reading about them because I'd rather be reading the Bible or the Catechism or a nice
Mm.
spiritual book. That's why I always kind of, the ones I've showed you are probably the pillars for me because they're very clear. I mean, who can
Mm.
put money on that? But these
Yeah,
things they happen. And then yeah, I've already as well, like the lightning strike in St. Peter's statue in Buenos Aires on Pope Francis's birthday, destroying the keys in the blessed hand. Even big channels like Taylor Marshall and Return to Tradition did videos on this. And I'm like, well, do you not forget all the signs I've covered in my videos about the lightning strike in St. Peter's Dome when Benedict retired that very
retired.
same evening? What about the meteors landing in Russia days afterwards and then in Argentina, where the new pontiff's from? Can't make that up. Do you know the day Pope Francis was elected in March 13th,
13th.
2013, 13th day as well? The very next day, Xi Jinping was re-elected Chinese president. And then a few days later, on the 18th, Putin was re-elected. These all came at the exact same week with these meetings happening round about in these prophetic countries and everything. But and everyone's just focusing on this statue in Buenos Aires. I'm like, there's more than one sign when it comes to having try to show us something here, I think.
Yeah.
And I think if any symbolism is to be taken from that for real, then it shows Pope Francis is right in the thick of it when you add in these numbered popes, the 2025 timeline from La Salette, prophesied time of the two popes conveniently at the same, all this. And then we've got Russia and China, the prophecies about how they would come into great big wars. North Korea's ready to go and be the spark of it. In
Mm.
fact, Michelle Rodrigue, Xavier believes in him. The controversy that went out about a while ago with these prophecies kind of get cleared up. And again, people on the fence just waiting to get the wrong stuff and never look up for the truth. But he says the October would be the beginning of tribulations. October 7th, Hamas attacked Israel, Feast of the Holy Rosary, Battle of Lepanto anniversary, October 7th. Things will start becoming more gradual in the tribulations from then on out. Well, from October to now, look where we are.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, Russia's still got a lot more to do if it's to go with prophecies. North Korea's back up and running with stuff ready to kick off there.
Mm.
And then China and Taiwan. Iran's taking pot shots at America a lot. Look what's all in the Red Sea. Four strike carrier groups are over there between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea from America alone. Not mention the British, not mention NATO and what they're doing. Like you say, with the German troops moving out for the first time since World War II. Finland and Sweden put in quick to NATO. The build up everywhere's there. But the chess masters, Russia, they're not just looking at head on confrontation with war. Look at the BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. I think there's about a total of 15 nations now on top of
Mm.
them. Nearly $30 trillion in GDP amongst them. They want to
Yeah.
keep trading in their currencies. The West is ready to go digital, and Britain and that, we're all following America with digital. What's going to come about to make that happen? And that's where there's great talk about a major financial collapse. And this
Mm.
is why I think it's credible. believe, and I'm comfortable to say it, especially after Daniel O'Connor's interview, this could all lead to the point, right? Here's the chaos. People are absolutely desperate, in fear and suffering and struggling financially and everything else of that ramification. Where's the savior?
Yeah.
Create chaos, bring in the savior, bring in the great reset, digitalized everything. And you look at how that's already went in communist China. That's what Lucia Fatma says. Communism will engulf the earth. Garabandal, was it Mariololi, or one of them says, when communism returns.
Mm.
This isn't China taking over the world. This is the World Economic Forum. The West is more communistic than most of the East now. You
Yeah.
know, it's the same evil, a new face, same evil, a new name. And your digital IDs, your digital wallets, your digital everything, your life is going to be digitalized and you will be easily controlled. And yet you've got the BRICS, Russia, the chairman country on it. There, see if that collapse comes, this is where you're going to see the idea of the Antichrist. Because remember, never before since the book of Revelation was wrote that if you've had a chance for the world to be controlled through buying and selling,
Mm.
never. Maybe
Yeah.
times of Nero or times of this the great Roman emperor or some other big tyrant leading countries, but you never had the world stage set for total control. That's now in place now for the first time. Artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, everything's all there. And this is where I think it's plausible to think that, well, if these are times of tribulation, why is Our Lady saying in Medjugorje, once the secrets, the events and the secrets come to pass, Satan's power will be destroyed?
Mhm.
Oh, wait a minute. What about the Antichrist?
Mm.
And this is what Daniel O'Connor says, and it's based on this book. I'm going to give it a reread because I got it off my aunt 10 years ago and I can't remember much of it. The End of the Present World and the Mysteries of the Future Life. And you'll see St. Therese of Lisieux here. She's quoting, that's how old the book is. Reading this book was one of the greatest graces of my life. And now, in that book, it's a priest, a French priest, I believe, writes all about the prophecies and the Bible and everything. And he says, where is it in sacred scripture or sacred tradition, even, that Jesus has to return on the clouds to destroy the Antichrist, and that's at the end of the world? He says that's not solid tradition. Who said that? So the idea that we could be in the time period of the Antichrist, when again, look at the evidence. Don't
Yeah.
say little thing, all of a sudden Jesus is coming. Oh, it's the time of the Antichrist. Look at the amount of prophecies we just put forth in that slide alone. Look at the books, read them, look at other things that we could bring in and speak for hours and hours and hours on. The signs are there where the stage is set that possibly the or an Antichrist could come just as described. A
Mm.
savior for all this nonsense will get everything right. But then this is what, remember, after the warning and the great miracles, there's a great time of persecution. And this is where you need to get yourself in line where you are from God. It's not all hunky dory after the warning, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
This is where we'll know where we stand and what we choose. And that
Mm.
new Pentecost, it's a pruning away and a rebuilding of the church of the world. And again, if Our Lady's going to change the face of the world and we're going into the era of peace,
Mhm.
this very well is possible that it is the time of the Antichrist. Satan's on his last journey.
Mm.
Lucia Fatma said decades ago, sorry to be long-winded, I'm hanging about with Xavier so much.
Yeah.
She said the last decisive battle between Christ and his church, the Antichrist and the false church, would be over marriage and family.
Yeah. We're living that. It's happening.
She told
It's
us to read, what was it, chapters 6 through 13, 8 through 13 of the book of Revelation. St. Michael and the Dragon, chapter
yeah.
13. 1884, October 13th, Leo the 13th
Yeah.
gave
Yeah.
us the Michael prayer. So if it's been all over all this time, over a century and building up, we must
Yeah.
be coming to a conclusion. And that's what that slide's showing. All the things are coming together right now. And we're in the last 12 to 24 months, if you're taking in the end of 2025 as that deadline from last select. The Queen has passed, the four popes have came and gone, but everything's all there in the once.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much. And I've never went to look to try and break a code or try and work it out and decipher it. I've just had a natural inclination, first having an attraction that, oh, she appears here, loving watching the movies as a child growing up. But then it's just like, well, that stands out for me, or that stands out for me. And then it's just kind of went in a natural way. And I do find that it's helped me understand an intimacy with God and how active He is in this world. But it's living the messages, living the faith that really brings a depth,
Yeah.
and that's the fundamental thing. It's the most important thing because when all the you can have the knowledge, so what? The visionaries know the 10 secrets. So why do they need to pray 4 hours a day?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember Ivan saying that Our Lady asked him to go from three to the fourth hour. He's like, how can I add in the extra hour? I've got kids, a wife, and all this. And I always remember it. She said, Ivan, it's only 1/6 of the day.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
we sleep 8 hours, there's 2/6. One
Yeah.
sixth is praying. So there's 3/6. That's 50% of your day done. You've got half a day to do whatever you want after all that. It's not a lot when you think about it, and I've just thought it was a little bit of wisdom from Our Lady. But
Yeah.
praying till prayer becomes a joy for you. I know exactly what that means.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
experienced it. No better than Medjugorje, of course, but there's special graces just there. But
Mm.
just to pray the rosary, have that quiet time, that journey with God year after year has just been phenomenal. And I think that's the key word of all of this, preparation.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
it's just interesting, not that we want to be end time doom and gloomers and all of this and getting people anxious, but when you look at what Our Lady said in Rwanda and Kibeho, she appeared, she warned, uh, and we saw what was coming, and it was very, it tied together, and she gave very specific signs of what we would see in the church, which we do. I'm sorry, I mean, let's face it, in the last, have we seen this level of division, bishops against bishops? Like I've never seen the rhetoric. When I see Cardinal Zen, what he said about Pope Francis, during the synod, and I said, I haven't seen this type of acrimony. I just it's just, this isn't the way we work in the church. I just didn't see this level of division. It would just be inconceivable under Benedict or under Pope John Paul. I mean, okay, with Lefebvre, you had he was one bishop, and he was very he was very harsh in some of the stuff that he did say. But now it's several bishops and several cardinals, and it's not just a small group, and it's not, you have even cardinals and bishops created by Pope Francis himself now coming out. I mean, it is unprecedented. Let's face it, guys, and we just need to accept the times we live in, and see where these go.
being in Rome at seminary with Benedict there and then retiring and being there with Francis, stepping out in the balcony and seeing these first couple of years in Rome. Benedict, you knew he was a deep theologian. He was a clever man. He
Yeah,
was amazing. He was the master. The only way I could think of how I felt in my little mind of what I picked up from him and the atmosphere of the church and seminary and everything, he felt very safe with his guidance as Pope. He felt very safe and secure. That's how I would
yeah,
describe myself feeling. Genuinely, those words. And I just feel that's long gone. I don't sense any clear direction that's good. I don't sense security. I don't sense that protection or anything under the current state of the church with Francis and whoever's running it. I really don't. I don't feel that
mm,
at all. And and it's not saying I don't like Francis or I'm judge. I've said many times I never judge the Pope because I'm not putting my own soul in jeopardy.
yeah. Neither
Selfish
am
as it
I.
may sound, I ain't doing it. However, I can still say like I'm not sure about that, or I would need more clarification. That's got my alarm bells up. What does that mean? You know, never had that with Benedict, not once,
Hmm.
not
Uh,
once.
I
Same
mean,
thing.
he's yeah. He said things that if Pope Francis said them, they would have like that prostitutes should be wearing condoms or something like that. He said that in South Africa, and of course they ran with it. The church has changed their teaching, and he was just saying, no, you need to avoid doing a greater evil. If you're going to do something, you need to avoid a greater evil of infecting somebody. And the theologians came in and defended Pope Benedict at the time. You see the church, okay, well, the Pope is saying this, but understand where he's coming from. And whereas with Pope Francis, it's there are certain Catholic movements that are just silent. They say they don't say anything critical, but they don't say anything to actually support him. There's certain it's just noted in the church certain movements that were heavily defending Pope Benedict and Pope John Paul under this pontificate. They step back and they're quiet. They're not getting into the debate. And I just feel this papacy has been left in a very different position than in previous papacies. It's just people we notice, when there's an event on in Rome now and the Pope has something, it's so poorly attended, and it's notable who's not there anymore. Um, and I just think it's just interesting the what is happening, and it'd be interesting to see where this goes. But like again, we're not here to Pope bash at all. We didn't create this confusion. We're just noting it's there. Like guys, it's I mean, I do think with this with this whole controversy over blessings, there was no need for there was no need for that document at all, because if you've ever been to a mass where the priest says if you're not Catholic in a state of grace, you can come up for a blessing. If you're in a mass or a funeral and somebody goes up there, they're gay or transsexual or God knows what, and they come up like this, the priest would give them a blessing, and nobody was saying anything for this. They were just saying, okay, that he's not Catholic and not in a state of grace, but the priest is giving him a blessing. And I think this whole discussion about unions and couples and all this
What's wrong with
is
it? Yeah.
it's confusing. Cardinals are saying it's confusing. Bishops are saying it's confusing. Priests are saying it's confusing. To my mind, it's confusing. I mean, on a pastoral level, if a priest is dealing with this situation, he'll know on a pastoral level what's appropriate in private to help a couple. Say if a couple says, look, we want to be more Catholic, can you help us? And the priest might pastorally work with them. But this document, it's not doing the job it's just creating division, and it should be retracted, uh burnt, and forgotten about it sooner or later, because I mean, nothing in that document. If you look at the quotes in that document, what are the footnotes, what they're quoting, it's extremely sparse on quoting sacred scripture. It doesn't quote any of the previous magisterium, any previous magisterial document. It's just quoting Pope Francis, and a lot of what we think is what was Cardinal Fernandez. He was the ghost writer for a lot of what Pope Francis had published. This is what. So the document, it just, come on, guys, let's be real. Uh, and I think we're coming to the Rome has to come to the realization. It's clarifications and stuff. There was an interesting debate with two Dominicans and a Franciscan in the UK. They were discussing this. You had Father Thomas Crean and another Dominican and Franciscan, and they were even having this debate very charitably. But you could see in the back and forth of the debate, even they're finding it confusing. And they're measured people, and they don't hate Pope Francis or anything like that. But they're saying, yeah, it's awkward, and we're all seeing this awkwardness in the church. And I just don't think, of all of the crises in the church, do we need this now? Do we need this now? No, we don't. We don't need this now. But I don't know what's on there. What next is going to come out of Rome in the next couple of months? It'll be interesting.
I think the church is so out of touch with the majority of normal people. It's
Yeah.
becoming more and more clearer.
Yeah.
And then again, being a seminarian, you could see just how clear that was in many ways. Um, the
It-
reason I was going to say as well, I don't judge the Pope for being the Pope, obviously that, but there are a couple of prophecies there as well that speak about how a pope, when all this other stuff happens, like I've says, like Trefontane, the Three Fountains is one of the ones to really echo that. That's one of my new favourite ones. But like Anne Catherine Emmerich, like Trefontane, like Marie-Julie Jahenny and a couple others, they've all spoke about a time where the Pope would have to flee Rome, like the
mm,
Pope being shot or martyred, and like riots happening in the Vatican and all this, which all coincides with everything happening at once, as we mentioned earlier. And it could be the case it might be Francis based in this time frame that we're in. It might be the case that he could be that martyred Pope. Because Our Lady says in one of her prophecies, when all happens, I'll be there waiting for his sacrifice. She'll be waiting
mm,
for. And it goes back to Fatima as well. That image of the Pope being shot with bullets and arrows, all the laity being shot, the city in half in ruins, that's never came about if it
yeah.
had to be as clear. But when you read Trefontane and when you read Marie-Julie Jahenny, when you read Anne Catherine Emmerich, you think they were describing that exact same image. So there's
Mm,
something more there, and people say, oh, the third secret of Fatima and all. So, well, if you want to know the third secret of Fatima, as far as I know, read Marie-Julie Jahenny before Fatima, read Trefontane after Fatima, and you'll get an idea what it was. I
yeah.
think it's a lot to do with that. But the church is so much out of touch right now, and I just saw a recent thing Pope Francis published there. I've never been Mr. PC in terms of using the words offensive, inclusion, diversity, all this. But the way diversity was used about the diversity of the church and the diversity of Africa, the diversity of the Orthodox, diversity, we're all diverse, the nature of the church is diverse. I'm like, it was a diversity on speed. And I'm like, what? Why? It was so clearly like a worldly word. And that's when sometimes you wonder he's hanging about with too many of the elites, too many of the economic forum pals and all this and that. And it's like this is like another worldly man-made up government. But you're
Yeah.
supposed to be the Church of Christ. It's supposed to be a difference. And sometimes I think that's what it is. It's just become too worldly. It's lost its way, and it's lost what it means about divine grace. And one thing that Xavier picks up a lot, and I think Daniel did a little bit on the interviews, there's a lot of talk that already in the Amazon they've changed their liturgy. There's talks about already within the Catholic Church, this Abrahamic religion and all this stuff coming over in the Abu Dhabi agreement, this diversity talk, like it's just come out in this recent article with the Pope and all that. They're working hard to bring in quickly some ecumenical Eucharistic prayer, an ecumenical liturgy. And as we've already been told from previous prophecies, right way back to Marie-Julie Jahenny and Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich as such, there will become a point that it's a false church, a false creed full of heresy. And that Eucharist will not be valid. It will not be Jesus Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity when this comes about. And that's the one key indicator when you see that happening, coming from your hierarchy in the Vatican and your church, and your favorite priest or bishop goes along with it. I, it's like we've been forewarned for a long, long time. This is not what it is. And that's when I think God will step in for sure, because
Mm,
the vacuum of grace that comes through the sacrifice of the Mass on the altar will no longer be vacuuming through that grace. And all we're left with is saturated sin to the point, close the book, enough.
yeah.
That's something that's all again, more things coming towards the end. See the amount of stuff happening in the church, the amount of stuff happening in the world. But this is something already that's coming through the whispers of different people in the church, priests and
Yeah.
bishops, that are
Yeah.
aware that this is in the making.
Yeah. Well, look, nothing would surprise me because, and I
Xavier,
suppose,
sorry to interrupt, Robert, but Xavier told me there, he says he made an exceptional Christmas there. He took his family on vacation. He says, because I don't believe this Christmas in 2024 or any after, I don't think it's going to be the same. I
Wow.
don't know if it just means the church or if it means all the world, the prophets.
World.
He himself feels that he had to have a special Christmas away from phones and internet, focus on his family, because he doesn't think he's going to have another Christmas like it
Yeah.
because of everything happening. And see if it's the case all these things come about as this church is trying to do it. I'll see you later. I'm going underground. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's the Trinity Church that I've never really been part of, and they're the ones that are saying that's where I'm going.
No, I don't. That part of the diversity of the church is no
I know
longer
it's, I mean, that's not
Yeah,
diverse.
sorry, it's diversity, but it's not that diverse.
I'll
No,
be
I
going
know,
where the truth is,
and
where the truth is.
yeah, I don't like to be divisive or anything like that. Look, we're just. Do you know? I was just thinking of all of the things the church should be focusing on in this moment of time. If you were going to do a declaration, and what does the church need at at the church needs people to stand up and bravely give the truth to the church. If you think about it in France, more more Muslims actively pray every day than Catholics actively pray. More Muslims will go to the mosque than Catholics will go to mass in France. 10 million people practice yoga. How many people say the rosary in France? You know, and so I'm just relating what has happened in this in the church. We you think you'd have a declaration from Rome on Catholic education, on renewal of the faith for our kids, on something that to build onto the future of the church. We're there pandering to the rainbow washing that has been coming into the West for years, and we're just saying, yeah, we want you to change, but when you're ready, we'll come on, speak clearly. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. And that document isn't clear. It's not. It's not giving clear direction, and it's not what the church usually does. It doesn't release something that is so ambiguous that you send half the church up in arms, and 1,000 bishops. I counted them between all the bishops' conference. 1,000 bishops. Even the Irish primate, Archbishop Eamon Martin, and he's very diplomatic. Nobody could accuse him of. But even he released a declaration, and at the end of it, he put in black writing and black font. And please, you're not allowed to give blessings to same-sex couples or irregular unions. And I'm just thinking, like, even Archbishop Eamon Martin, which he didn't reject the document. He was, as I said, he was very diplomatic about it. He said, read what the Archbishop in Norway has put out. But he was also you could also read in the document. He's also not James Martin. He's also not running off to do a press conference, and you know, people see that there has to be more. There has to be more clarification of this document. There has to be. It should be retracted completely. I'm sorry. I'm just saying it. And something, look, we'll bless the individual who's looking for the truth, who's looking for God's grace. We'll bless the individual. But sorry, look, we don't want to cause confusion or scandal by doing what James Martin is doing. I mean, sorry, guys.
Well, the fact that it's never cleared up whether he's right or wrong, it's never cleared up either from the
No,
top to the bottom. And confusion's never the word coming from God. That's the devil's great opportunity with confusion. And I was going to say something else there. I kind of forgot already. Can't remember. It's gone.
yeah. Somebody said that he's on a European speaking tour now this year. I don't know how true that is, but and that he's coming to Ireland. So it'll be. I don't know if that's gossip or what, but I don't know what reception Father James Martin would ever get in Ireland if he comes here. I think. I mean, I would certainly mobilize to, and I know other priests and people would do the same, because he just brings confusion wherever he goes.
And if they're going to be doing other photo opportunities with him there and all the rest of it, I'll be
Do you
like
know?
scored off. That's a good sign to see where the weeds and the darnel are mixed in with the
Yeah.
harvest.
Look, I'm all for, okay, help a ministry in the church that out, I think, yeah, okay, there is scope for a ministry, an outreach, a pastoral approach. Yes, yes, I understand. Yes, we need to do better and not make them feel so uh isolated and neglected and rejected. We have to be careful, we have to be pastoral, and we have to be human, but we also have to be truthful. We have to say, the truth is the truth. And sometimes the truth offends people. Sometimes the truth makes you feel uncomfortable, you know. I mean, I'm just thinking, how, if you're in a retreat and the priest is saying, and your conscience is bowed and stuff like this. Sometimes, that might drive you to confession. You say, well, look, I'm living this way. And the priest would say, well, look, the Catholic faith is this, work with the church, work with the sacraments, you know. Because do you know what, Mark, was really frustrating me? This is really, the church has a path to perfection, a path of sanctification, a path of deification. It's a process you bring people along. It's the purification, the contemplation, the unification of ourselves. It's that path of sanctification. And that is what it is. And what we're doing at the moment is we're not we're not clear on that in the church. We're even afraid to propose this to people that are in this irregular situation or that. And we're kind of afraid to say to them, look, this path of perfection, you need to purify yourself. And sin is this. This is what we've believed for 2000 years. You know, in the gospel, it says, if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery. Those are the words of our Lord. Now, a gay man can't say, oh, no, well, he's only saying if you look at a woman with lust in your heart that you've committed. Like, if a man does the same with somebody else, it's the same sin. You've created, this is, and you have to say, okay, look, Lord, bring me to your grace. And we are failing in the church. We are failing with this James Martin bullshit. Sorry to use that word, that he is twisting into pretzels the gospel, and he's not giving people the truth. I'm sorry. I mean, you can be so pastoral that you'll end up not giving people the truth, when sometimes the truth is what we need. I and
Sometimes
we
I feel sorry, I thought you were finished. There you go.
no, go ahead. Go.
Sorry, no, sometimes I feel like this might be ignorance, and I don't mean it to come across wrong with people watching, but I'm 38 years of age. I was an altar boy for years. I've cradle Catholic, always went to Sunday Mass and all that until after Rome for a few years. Anyway, I fail to see why like people who are homosexual feel so marginalized or outcast within the church. And the reason I say that is because see all the time growing up from a young boy, a teenager, now in the 20s, now in my 30s, I never once, I have no recollection, not once, hearing any priest preach from the pulpit speaking against the sin of homosexuality, sodomy, or anything. I have one recollection in these 20 years I've been force-fed with the media and all the stuff at work and all the stuff everywhere in society, the rainbow flags. This is normal, legalized gay marriage, gay adoption, this thing, the next thing, now it's the trans. That's all the positive movement that I can say I've had nothing but that for 20 plus years. Because I really noticed the difference after leaving high school, how that all changed in society bit by bit.
Yeah,
And these last 20 years, it's been so intensive and it's never relented. Not once, not even during COVID, it was still all there. I have one recollection of a priest having the chance to say something about it because the reading at Mass was Sodom and Gomorrah.
yeah,
And I'm like, right, come on, first time in 20 years, give us something, balance it out, make it clear with the teaching of the church, love, but the truth. And all I remember was he came off with something of poetry and it had absolutely nothing to do with the readings. And to this day, I have no idea what it was. That's how
Yeah.
much it made an impact. And I'm like, what on earth? What a wasted opportunity. And you know something? That's what the last 20 years have been for the church, especially in the West, especially in like my own country. I have no recollection in all my life hearing any priest blasting any type of human being for any reason, including those who may be homosexual. I've never heard it for the cohabiting couples that are all sitting in the chapel going to the Eucharist. They've never been bashed either. I've never heard it for any other sin or that.
Yeah.
So I don't know why this community of people, this group of people feel marginalized because I've never witnessed that.
Yeah.
What I
Well,
have witnessed is absolute silence from the priests and
yeah.
church teaching when we've had it thrown down our throats every day for the past 20 plus years. That's what I see.
Yeah.
So even a priest, there was in seminary the guys were saying, the priest, make up, the prayers and response, we pray for all men and women and all gay men and women, blah blah. I was like,
Yeah.
do they not fit under men and women?
Yeah. I
Why do
know.
you need to emphasize it? I know this
Yeah.
idea of we have to be inclusive. Well, you just said all men and women.
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
used
why do
to.
you need to
Yeah.
hyping up? It's there. You see the point I'm making. I've
Yeah.
seen silence from the priests, and I think every time I go to a lot of churches now, everyone's happy, everyone's pacifist, especially in the UK. Don't rock the boat mentality. Everyone's welcome. I've never ever once heard anything being preached against. It's
Yeah.
actually.
I can understand that because if you go back before Vatican II or there was a lot of preaching, and if you were a woman that's had a child outside of marriage, you were made to feel ashamed in the community, and that's why they covered it up, and and that wasn't healthy as well. So we moved from okay, we focused a lot of sin and we made people feel ashamed. The church did. That's the truth. You committed that sin, you should be ashamed, and especially around the whole sexuality side. Men were made feel ashamed, and then the church recognized it, and then it went from one extreme to it's gone from one extreme to another. Um, so it's gone from okay, we don't want to make it because people were so injured by their experience, especially in Catholic schools and stuff,
Hmm.
that the psychologically they ended up not believing or even taking their life. So I can understand the church being pastoral on the one side, okay, we don't want what we had 50. I mean, nobody wants to go back to what you had 50 years ago when somebody, honestly, through human weakness, um, sins, right? So you can see the human weakness there and you can see the sin, but you don't want to destroy that person's life that they can't come to know God, right? And yet we've gone to the other side today that we're all the time speaking of the prodigal son. Just imagine what you're doing. God loves you. Come back to the church. You'd be okay. But we don't, we're just leaving people there amongst the pigs today, spiritually, so that they're not being fed by the, we're just saying, yeah, we bless we bless you. Sorry, you want a blessing for us. Look, know the truth, let's bring you to the truth. What show people the beauty of the faith, the beauty of marriage, the beauty of chastity, which people are not talking about, the beauty of the faith. There has to be this balance. I mean, in Medjugorje, the priests are pretty clear. The priests are pretty clear on what sin is and what sin isn't is. Father Leon in his homilies, he'll spell it out clear enough. You're living with somebody, that's a sin. He's not afraid, but I mean, we have to have tact and be careful, but the church can't, it has to be clear, guys, because this is the spiritual path. You know, what separated people from God 2000 years it will still separate you from today. Um, but I don't think the church actually sees the true spiritual battle that's being waged here. I think they're kind of blind to it, in a sense, because if you don't give people the faith, if you don't give them direction, the world will give them their direction. And now we look at 6 to 700 men in Ireland over, between drug addictions and overdoses and suicide, well over 1,000 people every year just on our little island. And that's a lot of people when you take to account, what we do in the church. The anti-spirit, the spirit of this world will destroy you. And we sexual transmission disease, the highest that they've ever been in Ireland. This is the truth of it. Sin has consequences. If you drink too much, it's not just you're committing the sin of drunkenness. You're also destroying your liver. It will physically have consequences on you. I don't know. Anyway, we're going on way too long, and I think it's a fascinating conversation we're having here.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd like to finish off with everything being said, especially your last part there, I think the church would have been wrong back in the day to weaponize shamefulness to make people
Yeah,
feel ashamed as a tool, as a weapon of control. But at the same time, I would say in a way that don't be afraid if you do feel shame of what
yeah.
you've done, not what's happened to you. That's not
Healthy shame.
shame.
Healthy.
It's the first thing Adam and Eve felt after the fall. They felt shame. And
Yeah,
it's actually an invitation to go back to God's mercy.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Shame is like, and you hear a lot of people these days, no regrets, live life to the full, and before you know it, they've got more layers than an onion. And it's like you need to peel all this stuff away because you thought that was the right thing to do in order to get to the root. Get the layer. I done a poem once. It was like through the layers. Getting rid of our hopes and our fears, getting to the root where it'll come the tears. You need to get to the root cause, and it'll be hard. But don't put all these layers, shame over shame, and all this. No regrets. Live life to the full. Before you know it, you're
yeah,
completely covered and all that. Shame is the first response of the soul looking for mercy of the divine Creator. Don't be
yeah,
afraid. That's the thing. It's like we went from weaponizing it, which was wrong, to the
yeah,
point of don't let them feel shame.
yeah,
It's all
yeah.
thing back to God. Come on.
Anyway, I need to
That
wrap.
opens us up.
I need to wrap this up. It went too long, and I hear my wife calling me, so I need to help downstairs.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
I think to collect the daughter or something. Okay, Mark,
Well,
it was a pleasure
yeah,
talking to you.
absolutely brilliant, Robert. Thanks very much. Hopefully get you back on my channel again soon.
Yeah,
I'm always
absolutely. Next week we'll organize something for sure.
brilliant, my good man. Take care. God
God
bless.
bless. Bye bye.